Hello, everyone. This is Brian Inuma with Strategic Systems Group. We are a Los Angeles-based IT consulting firm and experts in enterprise resource planning. Our tagline is Transformation to the Intelligent Enterprise. I'm here with Jim Sandoval, and we are going to walk through a learning path that relates to machine learning. We are on the road to getting data analytics competency, and this learning path is one of the requirements. Jim, are you there?
I certainly am, Brian.
Very good. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Alrighty, pretty good. Okay, so now let me try this. I've been doing this on my local system with a browser. So almost everything that we're doing for this learning path and for the workshops that are related have been all browser related. Nothing on local system. Which is kind of a pleasant change, because working on your local system sometimes is problematic because of runtime and bandwidth and CPU power. So this is actually quite nice. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. So I'm going to go to the second learning path, and I'm going to take a look at the fifth module in this path. And then as I'm going through this, I think Jim will be able to kind of tell whether or not he has been doing something similar, or maybe we have to adjust his approach to this. So all I'm going to do for here is just kind of walk through a little bit about this module. So this module is part of a learning path that is called Build AI Solutions with Azure Machine Learning Service. And this particular module is the fifth module in this learning path called Orchestrating Machine Learning Pipelines. So this is what I typically have done, was to come here first to go and see if I can get to my learning path unit or module. And then what I've also done, as Jim probably has as well, is to also get into the machine learning component of Azure. This requires a login if you haven't already logged in. But it's the same login that we use for Office 365 and for Dynamics 365. So Jim, does this look familiar? Is your interface similar when you?
Yeah, I have a similar, basically the exact same thing when.
Okay, good. So what I have done typically for these units was to go to compute first. And I think that Jim has probably also gone through this set of screens as well for the compute instance, compute clusters, and inference clusters. Is that true, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I have been through a few workshops, so that's why I have a number of these things, and I could probably have just deleted them or created a new resource from scratch, but I thought, well, let me just keep these things out there and then create brand new ones. Okay, so this particular one is called a development workstation, and it's got some normal things in it that kind of relate to CPU and disk size and whatever. So when I created it, it was called a standard DS3 V2, which has a little bit more horsepower, maybe a little bit more memory than the standard workstations we had built in the previous workshops. Okay, so my sense is this is that when I first get here, if it's not already running, to go ahead and start it. So what I have been doing is to click here, and then click the start button. Since it's already running, basically we don't have to wait for it to do anything special. But in situations where maybe you've taken a break and then have come back to the learning module, then it'd be a good time to start this thing, go through the learning module, and then by the time you have finished and got to the exercise, this instance would all be started. Okay, makes sense so far, Jim? Does that seem familiar?
Oh yeah, I got my own training modules up in here. As a matter of fact, I am restarting one of them because it was hiccuping, and it might be might have been my mistake, but we'll see.
Okay, good. Right, very good. Okay, so these two pieces, so the learning path and the Azure machine learning service are kind of the main two pieces that we need to work with to get through these paths, learning paths. The other part that's important is this thing here, which is essentially a link to a Jupyter notebook. So this Jupyter notebook was created from scratch originally, and then in the process of getting our learning path started, we were given a GitHub link, basically a package of things that we are using for our learning path. Okay, so Jim, do these things look familiar?
No, I haven't really gone into those at all.
Oh, interesting. Okay, very good. Okay, that's kind of helpful. All right, so then in that case, let me go and finish what I have here for right now. And then basically we can use this to kind of finish up our discussion of the fifth module. And then we can kind of double back to where you are to kind of figure out where you have been and where you have to go next. Does
Okay.
that sound reasonable? Okay,
Sure.
good. Okay, good. So I'm going to just kind of go through this real quickly. I've already read it once, but I haven't done the exercise. So basically, this bit of learning path talks about a pipeline. And Jim, is the concept of pipeline familiar?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very good. So basically, the learning path. Oops, sorry. Let me backtrack a little bit here. Okay, good. Okay, so this is. Let me see. There might be one more. Okay, good. So this is unit 1 of this particular module. So it has 10 units altogether, including the exercise. And basically, this dialogue is essentially how to, I guess, the introduction to pipelines. So it kind of begins with an introduction, and then it kind of goes through each of the units, and it becomes a little bit more involved as we get farther down into the unit or into the module. So this is the second unit. Talks about an introduction, talks about the concepts of pipelines, and I think Jim has probably worked with pipelines, but perhaps in a different interface. So the pipeline concept is familiar, but maybe from a different perspective. Is that fair?
Well, there are certain elements of things that I've been working with that actually use direct data pipelines,
Uh-huh.
and that's my experience has been establishing those, but I haven't really had any experience writing any code or understanding what's under the hood with those. So this will
Uh-huh.
be interesting.
Good. All right. Good. Okay. So this is a matter of establishing pipelines which are used for more than one thing. Uh, as you point out, a data pipeline is one case. The pipeline can also be described as a series of steps that are kind of put together to string together data manipulation, extract, transfer, load, things that relate to the machine model, and training, and then at some point deployment for inference. So this particular bit of discussion talks about data. And then in each of these units, there is some code. So I think Jim has probably seen some code like this in some of his previous work with the learning module.
Oh yeah, and I've been doing some work with Python as well, trying to get up to speed with it.
Good.
But yeah, I'm familiar with the code.
Okay.
Can I specifically read what everything does? Probably not, but I'm familiar with it.
All right, good. So one of the tricks that I've sort of found was helpful. Maybe it's not critical to know what everything is, but maybe it's important to know what it's supposed to do. And maybe there are one or two lines of code essentially in here that are actually helpful, that actually run the thing. The rest of it is initialization of certain variables, definition of packages, and so forth. But the rest of it, there's maybe one or two lines, like these two lines, for example, that are probably important. And the rest of it, if you kind of ignore, for the moment, it's probably okay. So that was my trick, to just sort of look at the things that are pertinent. One of the pipeline things that we didn't do in the first set of exercises was to reuse a pipeline. So basically, we just created one, tested it, and ran it. However, in situations where it is necessary to use that same process over and over again, then to publish or I guess to reuse the pipeline and publish it, or reverse, publish the pipeline and reuse it, that's actually a pretty useful feature of the system. So this unit talks about publishing the pipeline so that it could be used later on. There are some ways to pass parameters to the pipeline. In this case, this regularization rate comes up quite often in the machine learning exercises, so that could be passed to the pipeline as a parameter. And then the next bit that might be useful is to schedule a pipeline where if necessary, the model needs to be retrained or deployed or whatever, a new data comes in, and basically the pipeline can be scheduled to run on a certain interval. Once a day, maybe once a week, might be sensible. I don't know that there are that many situations where it's got to run every 5 minutes, but you never know, depending upon what kind of data is coming in. Okay, very good. And then finally, we get to this unit 10, or sorry, unit 8 of 10, which is the exercise itself. So by chance, Jim, have you seen any of these exercises that look like this?
Oh yeah, in the previous module there was something similar, but yeah, it's basically sort of see one, do one, right?
Okay, very good. Okay, so now let me go back to this Jupyter notebook for a moment. So I'm on module 5. So what I'm going to do is go down here to see if I can get to module 5. So there is a Jupyter notebook with some documentation and some exercises, essentially, some code that are run from this Jupyter notebook. And this Jupyter notebook is running in that compute instance that I had showed you earlier. Okay, so Jim, have you seen this before, or something like this before in your learning?
Yeah, it's an editor script, right?
Yes, that's fair. Yeah, this is basically the equivalent of a text editor that kind of strings together sections or cells within the notebook. And then each of these bits of code can be run, and then you can examine the outputs of those bits of code. Okay, so maybe I won't go through everything right this moment, but maybe what I'll do is just as an example show what happens in this first section. And basically my next task, maybe tonight, is to go through the rest of these and then essentially click run and run all of these bits of code to the point where I can examine how pipelines are built and how they're reused and how they're cataloged and so forth. So that's my task for tonight. Okay, so just for example, what I have been doing is clicking on a cell and basically clicking this button called run. And then what happens in this situation is that it'll run the bit of code in this cell, and then typically would provide a response. Mm-hmm. In this particular case, it was just to verify that I'm logged into the right workspace, which is that Azure machine learning workspace. Okay, so I'm going to run it and then see what happens. Okay, so if I had not been logged in, it would have prompted me for login. But since I am logged in, it returns that yes, I am using the 1.7 version of the Azure Machine Learning Service. And then this is my compute instance. This is what I called my virtual machine. Okay, any questions?
Nope.
Okay, very good. Is this familiar? Have you done something like this before?
Yes.
Good, very good. Okay, good. So my next task would be to kind of go down the line in this document and essentially do the same thing at each of these. And basically, I generally tend to print this ahead of time. So I print this to paper, and then I use it to keep notes on. So as I'm going through each of these segments and click run, I'll take notes about what happened and what was supposed to happen, etc. But each of these bits of documentation coincide, for the most part, I think, to what was in those units earlier. So it's just a different way of presenting. But I think that all of the concepts that are in the earlier units with those bits of code are also in here. So I tend to ignore the units themselves and then pay more attention to what's in this exercise. Does that help a little bit? Jim?
No, I see the logic in that. Yeah.
Okay. That way, when it comes time to take the test, I'll have something on paper and have written something. And I
No,
tend to
I mean
find.
that actually really goes to the target of my anxiety, which was basically having
Mhm.
the notes and the necessary prepped information going into the test, or at
Yes,
least for study purposes.
yes. So I have been printing these things two sheets per page, so two up. And then I've been printing front and back. So on one page, I can actually get four pages on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can get 8 pages basically on one sheet of paper. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Anyway, this is my process of as far as this section is concerned. One more thing that maybe I can show before we leave this is to go back to this learning path, which is entirely web-based. It does require a login. And basically, once I had finished the exercise, then to kind of go to this knowledge check. And this knowledge check is what we kind of bumped into a little bit earlier.
Right.
So these are they're not real technical questions. They're more conceptual questions, which is helpful. But I have also been making copies of these on paper to use these potentially as preparation for the exam.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then I have gotten them wrong. You can fix them and get them right, and basically just try and get that.
Oh, these are pretty easy. I haven't really had too much of a problem with these. It's one of those, we're just making sure you actually read this stuff kind of
Uh,
questions.
yeah, very good. Yeah, that's correct. Good. And then maybe what I'll do, just to kind of finish this bit, I'm going to kind of backtrack. So I'm going to kind of pretend that I have finished the exercise, and then kind of backtrack to what I would typically do when I'm done, and that might be kind of useful for you as well. Okay, so let me see what I am. Okay, so here is the notebook that's open. Um, what I typically have done after I finish the exercise is to go through the process of halting and closing. So I don't know if you've seen this yet, but I've tried to halt and close. The rationale behind this is that while the machine is running, it's actually costing something.
Right.
So the idea is to try and finish the exercise and then go ahead and shut things down so that you don't incur additional costs. Okay, so I'm going to do that for the notebook and go and close this one out. That no kernel message pops up and then the page disappears. This one is not so critical in the sense that nothing is really running. So typically I would just close this tab. This is basically just the equivalent of a file folder. Okay, then once I get down to here, I will typically go to this guy. So this is the one that's running. That's the workstation that I was using to run those Python scripts. And then I will stop. And then this takes a little while. So just like it takes a little while to start, it also takes a little while to stop, which is kind of bizarre. Okay.
I have done this because I'm having some troubles with running a script, so I had to stop it and restart it.
Okay. Right. Very
So
good.
I have been on this page, yeah.
Good. Okay. Good. So that I'll just for the sake of a demonstration, I'll stop it,
Oh.
and then I'll come back to here, and basically I would have finished my knowledge check, gotten my achievement award or whatever they give you, and then I would close this out. So this is basically just a browser. What I have done, though, at times, is to go and create a bookmark. So if I've gotten to a certain point into the learning path or into the module but have not finished it, I will often go and create a bookmark for it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then that way it's easier to come back to. You don't have to kind of wander through the entire mess.
Yeah, I created a folder in my bookmarks for this as well.
Okay, good. And then one thing that I did want to show was to come back here. So I think this is the very first bit that talks about the certification. And what's kind of fun, I guess, is to kind of look through the process, and all of these things are probably familiar. And this is kind of where the module starts. Okay, so basically there are two learning paths to finish certification, and then the exam down here. which we are both destined for at some point. This bit I finished. So I finished the 4 modules in that first learning path, and then, as we kind of noted, I have finished the 4, and then on the 5th module of this learning path.
Well, I am on module 2 of the second learning path is
Okay.
where I'm at.
Okay, very good, good. And then I guess when you said that like there were 9 units or something.
Yeah, there were 8 units in the module that I'm currently in, I think.
Okay,
Something
very
like
good. Good, good.